All right, folks, check, radio check. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Some of this it may be familiar to, some of it may not, but it's always a good reference point to understand how we can answer this question. Will you run out of money? Right? So if you're approaching retirement, and as I have conducted classes across the country and locally at either Rutgers or Raritan Valley or Kane or any number of venues in the past, I will poll audience who here by a show of hands is afraid of possibly running out of money in retirement. And invariably, people in the audience, it's the number one fear of folks as they approach retirement. How do we keep what we've worked so hard to earn? So as we go further, are you concerned about potential issues surrounding your retirement? Whether you're making long-range plans close to retirement or you're already retired, we can help you to create a clearer picture of what your financial future may look like. Today, people are living longer. And that means that some folks, as they enter retirement, is 20, 30, 40 years into retirement. I just had a conference with a gentleman last week, and, he's 57, and he says, I'm done. Well, life expectancy takes you out to 95. So there's very easily 35 to 40 years that we have to plan for. The bad news is, unfortunately, many folks have no idea what it takes to survive financially throughout retirement. And the main concern is, will we outlive our money? So we've stated that, and I've spoken about in the past, one of the greatest risks that we face in retirement is longevity risk. And it's not just a risk, but it's a risk multiplier. What does that mean? Well, if you think about it, if we shut off our ability to earn a paycheck, and now we're relying on solely whatever assets we've accumulated, Social Security or any government assistance, pensions if you have one, you may have an income gap. Okay? Well, what happens if the assets that you've acquired are subject to tax risk? What about market risk? What about inflation risk, right? And it's not just, we think about that and we're like, okay, well, right now, what's the inflationary rate, right? It's probably considered minute, 1.5%, 2%, but long-term, the average is in excess of 3%. The way to think about that is a gallon of milk today is going to cost more in the future. Well, if that's true and all things cost more to have the same buying power, the risk that happens not just once, but 2 or 3 times in the course of 2, 3, or even 4 decades. That's the point. Healthcare costs. The market, could it correct? Again, we just had a major correction, fall off, sell off, COVID in March. Are we wise to think that could happen again? This longevity risk is not just today, but multiple times. And what steps are we taking to protect what we have? The good news, we can help give you a clearer picture of what your retirement years may look like. Bad news, many people planning for retirement are affected by the lump sum illusion. This occurs when a person feels comfortable with a large sum in their retirement portfolio, but hasn't determined how long it will last. How much money you accumulate at retirement is just as important piece of the puzzle, but by itself doesn't mean as much as you think, right? So think about it. I've used the analogy in the past of the accumulation phase, going up the mountain versus going down the mountain. Remember the old ING commercial or Prudential, what's your number? And it was it's not a line in the sand. So if you decide to retire at 57 or 62 or 65 or 70, it's not this lump sum that is important, is what is your lifestyle like? What are your spending habits like? It's a multitude of factors. So example, let's take Dan and Cheryl here. They are fictitious and they're 53 and 47. Dan's earning about 60 a year. Cheryl's about 50. Both would like to retire in 10 years. They have total liquid assets of about $500,000 and their monthly budget is $7,000. So, they're sitting back and saying, okay, it's 63 and 57. Can they retire even putting a growth rate on what they currently have and contributing. Well, a financial shortfall may be on the horizon based on their spending habits and the sources of their income, such as retirement accounts, Social Security pensions, and any reasonable projections in a detailed analysis. Without any changes, they may run out of money in as early as 14 years. So, what does your future look like? And this next chart, what I show here, this is them, their red line. It just shows that they've spent down their account balances all the way to the right, have gone to zero at age 85. And if they're, around for another 10, 15, 20 years even, this could be a troubling end of stage life event. So part of what we do and part of what we help folks to do is first understand where we're at. And secondly, let's see if I can help get the red out, help to improve your current position. And it's not a quick 1 year correction. This is starting to understand the impacts, like I said, not only of market risk, but of tax risk. So we can help you answer the following questions. Can I continue my present standard of living into and through my retirement years? This is one of the myths that I hear in retirement. Oh, when I get to retirement, I'm only going to have to live on 70% of what I was earning while I was working. And even if that were true, and quite often we find that not to be true, but even if that were true, why would you want to get to a point in time where you're living on less in retirement? Now, I understand the argument that, well, I won't have my mortgage or my house will be paid off, and that's fine. This calculator, this modeling that we do allows us to take that into consideration. When can I retire without running out of money? I mean, who wouldn't like to know that answer? I just had a phone call with a longtime client of mine that was unfortunately laid off. But what was so absolutely just to me fulfilling was to be able to call him today and go, you know what, I looked at your numbers, and even though you're 57 years old, you and your wife are going to be okay. You're fine. You don't run out of money. Because I've been helping them for 10 years now to help prepare that. Let's start to take steps now. So that was really, really cool and a good feeling to be able to share that news. How can optimizing my Social Security benefit and how will that help your specific circumstances? I've said this when I've done my live events. You cannot make Social Security decisions in a vacuum. You cannot. Back in the days when we pre-COVID, when we were around the water cooler and we were asking for advice from our coworkers, you cannot take water cooler advice. Social Security and the intricacies and the impact that it will have on you, your specific circumstances need to be analyzed in your specific circumstances. You can't be saying, well, the guy next door, he collected at 62, so that's when I'm going to get mine. And Social Security is going to be bankrupt, so I'm going to get it now. It could have a significant impact on the amount of money that you're going to get later and the impact of taxation of your overall assets in the future as well. So how could my situation change during challenging economic times? Great question, right? Things happen. So let's start to look at those and let's start to address the elephant in the room. How would it affect my family if I die prematurely? I always call dying premature, right? But if you were to pass, and like I shared to a lot of you that, I lost a friend this year in September, 61 years old. Gentleman went out to his car. He's in construction, and he didn't come back inside. The jack slipped. And just when I went to the wake and you see the people that are affected, nobody plans. Nobody wants to think about it. It is awful. But you know what? I also had a conversation with a woman that I put in place 15 years ago, a policy for the husband, and he's now been diagnosed terminally ill with 6 months to live. And the feeling of thank you that was expressed to me today lets me know why it's so important to talk about the things that are uncomfortable. How would it affect your family if you enter a nursing home? This is one of the biggest unknown variables, and the probability is high that you're going to not only enter into and need some type of care, but it's going to be expensive. And then what are the possible solutions? I mean, once we build a model and you look at it and you say, okay, you are here. Now we can start to evaluate where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What could go wrong? Hey, I don't want to be gloom and doom. I want your retirement years to be the golden years, everything you've dreamed of. But let's make sure that we've gone into it with our eyes open. So that's what Retirement Analyzer helps you do. And it does it with three simple steps. We will gather the data. And again, I always share this. If you don't know me, in the beginning, trust takes time. I don't need sensitive data, right? I don't want your social security number. I don't want your account numbers. I don't want your tax returns. We might need them eventually. I'll have questions that you'll have to pull data from. But until we get to that point, you still can have answers to your questions. And it's what I call results in advanced planning. We will also discuss and decide on conservative estimates specific to your personal situation. And then we will be glad to help guide you anytime questions or concern arise now or in the future. So where are your assets? I mean, it just helps us to understand. And I can tell you how many times folks come in and they literally have accounts all over the place. It's hard to manage assets. You can have assets in many, many different places, but having a place to sort of go to and update regularly is just prudent. And then we can start to pinpoint areas of concerns or topics of concerns. And then ultimately, if you do have a red line, if the projections and the assumptions that we've used to sort of paint out what the future would look like, well, what can we do to start to extend that out, right? If it's possible, right? So we may not be able to solve everything, but we can definitely improve your circumstances. And sometimes it's with is an itemization or a budget, right? If you give me general information on your budget, I'm going to give you general information on your outcomes. But you start to dial in, and I know specifics about, hey, we're spending money here and spending money here, and we're not going to have this bill in the future. Well, now I can start to fine tune the results, and that will also help us in retirement. So, and then how much is enough? I mean, wouldn't it be great? And then quite often the folks that I work with, we're able to start to project. And I know it seems like a crazy number out to age 100. But notice that there's no red line for this couple with some adjustments. And you go, but I don't know how long we're going to be on this planet. But you know what? We need to recognize that with medical advancement, with lifestyle changes, we are living longer. And if that is in fact true, and we have more centurions living today than we've ever had in history, then we need to start to take and prepare that end of stage, later stages in our life that we're prepared as well. So our offer to you, working together to get an initial look at your retirement picture at no cost to you. Let me repeat that. That's what results in advanced planning means. I'm perfectly willing to put in my time to build a model, to have a discussion, to show you what I see. And then if I see anything, wouldn't you want to know? So I'm confident that we're able to start to point out some things that you might have sort of had a suspicion could have been a risk, but now I'm able to quantify it or to identify it and say, hey, you know what? This is something that should be addressed here in the near future. So our offers to you, creating a financial plan today that can be updated into the future. That's the beauty of it. Once we go through the exercise now, I had a client that came in this year that we sat down with 3 years ago, and they didn't have to go nuts getting me current data. They were just they had changed jobs. I still had their file. So to be able to go in and say, here's where we were 3 years ago, here's where we're at now, here's what the future looks like, it was like you would have thought I just told them it was Christmas. Because this is people's biggest reservation. It's like, once you get your arms around all the data, you don't want to have to go through this exercise once a year. And once we put this in place, we can just verify what has changed and then make course corrections based on your decisions in education. So it's easy to understand analysis specific to your situation, addresses many of your financial concerns, gives you answers to a lot of those important questions we just talked about, can provide a sound strategy now and into the future, and then the annual reviews to keep you on track, and more frequently if we need to. So we have a program that's called 9 to Know. 9 questions to know if you'll run out of money in retirement. If you'd like to fill that out to see what a model might look like for you, it's 9 questions that once you fill that out, we'll be able to go in and start to take a snapshot in time and say, hey, this is what your model might look like. It's a starting point at absolutely no risk and no cost to you. So, I just really want to thank all of you. Please stay safe out there, right? This too shall pass. But, also don't keep us a secret. If you know somebody that could probably use some professional financial guidance, purely holistic, we are fiduciaries and we believe in full disclosure. If you need me, you know where to find me. Here's our disclosure that we have to put out there. And then lastly, I just want to say thank you, right? And if you have a question that maybe something I sparked a thought, but you weren't invited by me and you were invited by some of our advisors, reach out to them. But if you can't get a hold of them or they don't know the answer, always I have an open door policy. Folks, have a great day. Thank you for showing up. And again, if you need me, call me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.